We are continuing with the basic terminology of I.33 manuscript, and today I would like to look at two terms. The second one will be the separation of sword and shield. And the first one is in fact not an expression, it is the image or a feature of an image. I'm talking about this kind of inverted hand. I would like to look at what this inverted hand in fact means. Usually this inverted hand is interpreted as this kind of position. You start with the most natural thing you can hold, way you can hold the sword, and you turn your elbow inside and switch the sword from true edge to false edge. So this is usually the position that it is interpreted as. I want to note that this is not the only position that is possible, because if you start in the same position and turn your hand, your elbow to the outside, you are ending in something that would look exactly the same if you draw it in the style of early 14th century images. Because in this position, we are recognizing the position in manuscript mostly by that the fencer is showing to the viewer his fingers and his thumb is pointing up, which is true in this position. I am showing my fingers at you and my thumb goes up. But it is also true in this position. In this position, I am still showing my fingers against you and my thumb is also pointing up. So I would argue that if the 14th century illuminator would draw me in this position and this position, it would look the same. Which means that if we are seeing this inverted hand in the manuscript, we don't know if they mean position like this or like this. So which one they do mean? I don't know, and I believe that they in fact are using both of these positions. It depends on the situation. So my recommendation would be to find the concrete, the exact image you want to explore, put yourself in the exact situation, and then try to do what they are showing with this kind of rotation and this kind of rotation, and choose the one that looks more natural for you. For me, I believe that if you look at the play when I am cutting half shield at my opponent and my opponent omits his defenses, omits his bind, I am then advised to turn this cut into a thrust with the inverted hand. In this place, I would argue that the best way to do it is to go outside in this type of outside thrust, because it is much more easy, much more natural. You may also go inside, but this position is kind of awkward. In this play, I would say that they are teaching to go in this position, to the outside. But if we look at the later parts of the manuscript, where they are showing extremely rare siege that looks like this, and which is probably a false edge cut to the head. Here I believe that what they are showing is a false edge cut that starts from tertia custodia and looks like this. And this thing is easily from the inside turn of the sword. It could probably also be a false edge cut from secunda custodia and from the outside. But this kind of cut is kind of strange and it doesn't seem natural, so natural for me. So I believe that this rare siege that they are showing there is in fact a cut from Tertia Custodia and involves this inside turn. So I have found both of these positions in 133. They look very similar when they are drawn in the style of 14th century paintings. But I believe that these images are displaying a different position. One is like this, and one is like this. And now the expression separatio scuti et gladi, the separation of sword and shield. This is also in some other places of the manuscript referred to as not separatio, but dividendo. Dividendo, which means like divide or division. Generally, it means the same as separation. I am sure that both these words are referring to the same thing, because they literally do in the manuscript. The same technique is referred to in two places, and in one place it is called separatio, and in the other place it is called dividendo. So separatio and dividendo means the same thing, in my opinion. And this was usually interpreted as sort of a mistake of the fencer. If you look at the images of 133, you will certainly quickly recognize that they are very often holding hands together, sword and shield together, and they are moving with these together. So there seems to be some unspoken rule which says if your sword is in front of you, then always hold sword and shield together. I don't believe it is so strict, but it certainly looks like that. And when you are reading about separation of sword and shield, the first thing that comes to your mind is that you failed to hold sword and shield together, and you put them apart, and that is a mistake that opponent can abuse. So this separation of sword and shield is often described as an error of the opponent, or as your action that can force the opponent to separate the sword and shield, to put them apart, which will somehow force him to do this error that you can later abuse. I don't think that this interpretation is correct, and I am basing it on the play that is shown in somewhere around the middle of the manuscript. When they are talking that common fencers, if we are cutting half shield against a common fencer, he very often goes for the separation of sword and shield. And this is a technique that is described there quite clearly, so we know what it means. It means that if I am in a half shield-like position, the opponent can, with a descending cut, slide his blade along my blade and between my blade and my shield. Even though I am holding both hands together, he still can slide his blade between my blade and the shield. Which is true. This happened to me in my very first sparring with sword and buckler, when neither me nor my opponent knew that this is possible. And it happened to me. I was protecting myself like this, and his sword came through between the sword and shield and hit me. And I was quite surprised then. So now I know that it is possible, and it is exactly described in 133 manuscript. So in this play that I am referring to, the priest explains that the common fencers usually abuse this mechanism. When you are going in a half shield-like position at them, they are trying to slide their blade between your blade and the shield, which will probably hit your hands, and even if not, then they are already behind your defense, so they can continue with the thrust. Help shield. So we know about this mechanism, the sliding of the blade between sword and shield, and this mechanism is what is referred to as separatio gladi et scuti, the separation of sword and shield. So the separation of sword and shield is not a mistake, or it does not mean that the opponent somehow put sword and shield apart. No. It is a technique that enables you to slide your blade between his blade and the shield. That is separatio scuti et gladi, or dividendo, whatever word they use. If we look at the manuscript for information about how to use this, mechanism of separation sword and shield, we will find that the common fencers quite often go for this separation mechanism when you are cutting half shield at them. But it is not what our priest recommends to us, because he teaches us how to defend against it. And the defense relies on, when we are cutting half shield, we are already expecting our opponent to go for this, because we know that if I am cutting half shield, and the opponent is in secunda custodia or quinta custodia, then he may go for this. So I'm already expecting, when cutting at him, that this can happen. And when I realize that he is going for this separation, what I am told to do is to turn sword and shield like this, from horizontal position to vertical, which will stop any possibility of sliding between the sword and shield, and continue with the thrust. This is the proposed defense by the priest, and this is probably why the priest doesn't want us to go for this separation of sword and shield against half shield, because it is there is a simple defense to use against it. But in other situations, maybe less common, the priest uses this mechanism, and he uses it in the very first play after pushing the opponent's blade down, and then it is said that the priest would perform nuken, which is probably a false edge cut, that would cause the separation of sword and shield. And this, I believe, is false edge cut that is aimed between his sword and shield to cut his hands, and then probably continue to the thrust. No. This is also used in some later parts of the manuscript, once again. So the priest does not like to go for the separation of sword and shield against half shield, but he has his own situations when he likes to do it. And this is the situation from the first play. So these were another two terms, and in the next video we'll probably look at the other ones.